Hey everybody, I can hardly believe we are on the last history video for this whole year. This is our last video about World War II, Part 6. So, I would like you to be on page 313 in your textbook and have your notes ready for our last lesson of the year. World War II, Part 6. As we learned in our last video, Hitler committed suicide, Mussolini was executed, and so the battle in Europe is over and the Allies are victorious. However, Japanese have not surrendered and the war in the Pacific rages on. So, the US and the Allies are winning in the Pacific. So they want to get better island bases. They want to start bombing mainland Japan, the actual island of Japan, because they figure if they start bombing Japan, Japan will realize they're defeated and they'll surrender. They have a new bomber called the B-29 bomber, but it is too heavy for the aircraft carriers. So they've got to take islands that are close enough to Japan that the bomber can fly to Japan, drop bombs, get back to the island base without running out of fuel. So the first island they decide to take is Saipan. Okay, so when you look at the map, and sometimes I have a hard time with these maps because they are small, but right here you see Saipan. Okay, here is Saipan. Here is Saipan on the big map as well. So you can see that Saipan is getting very close to mainland Japan. The Allies can build airfields on Saipan and they can fly to Japan to drop down bombs. So the Allies attack and conquer Saipan. The Japanese try to stop them. They try to stop them in the sea, but they are no match for the Allies. 3 Japanese aircraft carriers and many aircraft are destroyed. And in fact, Japan loses so many aircraft that they have a hard time defending themselves from this point on. The Allies only lose 1 aircraft carrier, and now that they are on Saipan, they can actually bomb mainland Japan to end this war. Meanwhile, General MacArthur heads toward the Philippines. Now you remember that he was driven out of the Philippines and had to retreat in 1942. And he promised, I will return. And he did. So the Japanese try to stop the Allies at sea. There's a battle called the Battle of Leyte Gulf, where the Japanese try desperately to keep the Allies out of the Philippines, but they are defeated again. And now the Japanese use a new weapon, which you've probably heard of before. It's called the kamikaze. So a kamikaze is an airplane that is filled with explosives. And then the pilot gets in the airplane and deliberately flies it right into an Allied ship. So it's a suicide mission. The kamikaze, the person flying the kamikaze, knows they're not going to come back alive. They kill themselves in order to destroy the Allied ships. So this is a picture, and of course it's really hard to find pictures of this stuff because it was in the middle of a battle, but this is a picture of a kamikaze and it's getting very close to an Allied battleship. It doesn't show the impact, but it shows you that the plane would basically dive bomb the Allied ships. These were called the kamikazes. Now, the kamikazes did not stop the Allies. They continued to win. They took the Philippines. But the kamikazes, as you can imagine, made the Allies extremely nervous because of the length that Japan was willing to go. The Japanese refused to surrender, even though it was obvious they were being beaten. They refused to surrender, and they would rather kill themselves than surrender. And actually, many Japanese people ended up killing themselves during this time because they could not face surrendering to the Allies. So the United States is really worried. How are we going to defeat these people? What is it going to take for them to admit they're beaten and surrender? So MacArthur takes back the Philippines, and now we are able to bomb mainland Japan. So this is a picture of our B-29 bombers dropping bombs. This is something else that the Allies did. Before they would bomb Japan, before they would bomb a certain area of Japan, they would drop leaflets. Now, of course, it's in Japanese, so can't read it, but they would drop leaflets warning the Japanese people, we are going to bomb you. Surrender now so we don't have to bomb you. They would actually warn them ahead of time. They would show them pictures. Look, we're going to bomb your city. Surrender. But the Japanese, like I said, they don't want to surrender. They refuse to surrender, even though they are warned. And so even though the United States and the other allies drop these leaflets, Japan refuses to surrender and ignores the warnings, and the bombing continues, and many people in mainland Japan die. Then we get to Okinawa and Iwo Jima. These islands are very, very near to mainland Japan. Here is Iwo Jima, and here is Okinawa. As you can see, we're moving closer and closer and closer to mainland Japan. So the Allies first attack the Battle of Iwo Jima, which becomes a very fierce battle, which we eventually win. Here is a short video to give you a little idea of what it was like at the Battle of Iwo Jima.
This is Staff Sergeant Alvin Josephi Jr., a United States Marine Corps combat correspondent speaking from Iwo Jima. An attack is underway, and so far this morning, in a couple of hours, they have gone approximately 500 yards through the most difficult kind of terrain. This island is studded with pillboxes, and they have already passed through several lanes of them and have passed over the volcanic ash, the terrible yellow, craggy, rocky, lifeless soil of this part of the island. Whoops, some bullets are whistling past us. We are in the open. Japanese mortars and also small arms fire are occasionally dropping around us. This is very near the front, and there is quite a bit of fire going on around here. The roar you hear in the background, our planes are coming from our own planes that are assisting the infantry just up ahead of us. It is a tremendously well-fortified island. I compare it to the Siegfried Line or one of those fortified lines in Europe, except that this is the entire island studded with such a line. Well, this is a moment at Iwo Jima. It is what the men are living under in their foxholes here. When you go to bed in your foxhole at night, you lie awake usually for hours listening to this. Now, this is Staff Sergeant Alvin Josephi Jr. concluding this broadcast from Iwo Jima.
Okay, so as we said, the Japanese are a very fierce fighting force. Iwo Jima had all of these underground bunkers and underground tunnels, and these 20,000 forces were all dug in underground. It was a huge and fierce battle, and literally all 20,000 of those Japanese soldiers died or missing. Many of them killed themselves so they did not have to surrender. Eventually, the U.S. do take Iwo Jima. After they take Iwo Jima, it is on to Okinawa, the next island, and you can see how very close it is to mainland Japan. Japan is desperate and they're losing. They refuse to surrender. It took 82 days of fierce fighting before the Allies could take Okinawa, and we're going to watch a little bit of the Battle of Okinawa.
We're continually moving in closer toward Okinawa Shima. Directly overhead, squadrons of dive bombers, our dive bombers, fly towards the island of Okinawa to meet the Japs. We can see the yellow smoke of the gunfire above the battleships. We are passing transports over our starboard and over our port as we plow ahead, headed for the beach and headed for the Jap.
We debarked from our ships. We landed in Okinawa and we had no idea of what kind of resistance we will encounter. There were no Japanese, there were no natives, there was nothing. We made our way immediately to the airport that had been deserted by the Japanese, and we found a good many destroyed planes and bombs, but no resistance. By the end of the second day, we had crossed the island, and that was when our trouble began. Our progress was not by miles and not by hundreds of yards, but practically by inches, because the resistance was very strong. There's not a single one of my team who got away uninjured.
Okay, a little bit more information. This is fierce, fierce fighting. The Japanese do not surrender. They fight to the death. So we have now taken Iwo Jima and Okinawa. We are very close to mainland Japan. And so there's an ultimatum given to Japan. An ultimatum is basically a do this or else statement. So Japan is told by the Allies, surrender unconditionally right now, or prompt and utter destruction will follow. So they give this declaration to Japan. And you might not be surprised to know, Japan does not listen to their declaration. Japan refuses to surrender. Another thing to note is this. By the time we get to the summer of 1945, Franklin Roosevelt has died. He died in April, right after the victory over Hitler in Europe. So President Truman is now in command. This picture I think is interesting. There's Stalin. Remember, he's an ally. He's on our side. Not really thrilled that he's our ally, but he is our ally at this point. There's President Truman, and there's Winston Churchill, the inspirational leader of Great Britain, who kept Great Britain strong through horrible attacks by the Nazis. So these are the three of them at the Potsdam Declaration. We're going to watch a short video just giving you a little bit more information about the Potsdam Declaration, where we say to Japan, surrender or else.
Hello, in today's 70 Seconds, 70 Years, we look at the Potsdam Declaration, the document that set down the framework for the post-war global order. The declaration was jointly issued by the US, UK, and China on July 26, 1945, during the Potsdam Conference, calling for Japan to surrender. The terms included the elimination for all time of the authority and influence of those who have deceived and misled the people of Japan into embarking on world conquest. The official response of the Japanese side was that of mokusatsu, which was interpreted as to kill with silence by the Allies. Only after the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki did Japan announce its surrender and accept the terms mentioned in the Potsdam Declaration. This signaled the victory in the war against fascism around the world. I'm Wang Yizhi with CCTV News. I'll see you next time.
Okay, so the Potsdam Declaration. At first, Japan ignores it. They said, like in the video, to kill with silence. They say nothing. They just ignore us completely when we say surrender or else, which was a very unfortunate thing for the Japanese people. As you probably know, by the summer of 1945, the United States has developed the atomic bomb, and we have actually 2 atomic bombs. President Truman does not want to drop the atomic bombs on Japan. That is why the Potsdam Declaration warns them and says, surrender. If you don't, there's going to be destruction. Surrender now. They give them one more chance. Truman does not want to have to invade mainland Japan. He knows that many, many hundreds of thousands of Allied soldiers will die. He's not willing to do that. And so on August 6, 1945, the B-29 bomber, its name was the Enola Gay, there's a picture of it and a picture of its crew, drops an atomic bomb on the city of Hiroshima in Japan. That bomb kills between 135,000 and 200,000 people, causes great suffering and great destruction. Amazingly, incredibly, after the bombing of Hiroshima, Japan still won't surrender. And so, 3 days after the first bomb, on August 9th, the second atomic bomb is dropped on the city of Nagasaki, causing tremendous suffering, pain, and destruction. After this, Japan has to surrender. They have no more resources. They have cities that are destroyed. And finally, Japan surrenders. So, the aftermath for Japan. The surrender actually becomes something very good for Japan. For a while, the U.S. takes control of Japan. Tojo, remember the leader who designed the attack on Pearl Harbor, who convinced the Japanese that they wanted to fight in this war, he is executed. Many other Japanese people who supported the war, wouldn't surrender, kept encouraging Japan to keep fighting and keep fighting, were tried for war crimes. Many of them had committed horrible crimes during the war. Emperor Hirohito, interestingly, they allowed him to stay. And here's a picture of Hirohito and General MacArthur. He's basically a figurehead. He's not really in charge, but he is allowed to stay. General Douglas MacArthur, there he is. He's in charge of Japan's government. He's in charge of reshaping Japan. So he tries to help Japan become more of a democracy, have more freedom. He wants Japan to be more open to Christianity. And he wants Japan to start having peaceful industry instead of all their industry being focused on war materials, war materials, war materials. So the good news for Japan is that instead of their country being run by a strong group of military-minded people who supported the war, they now have a more democratic nation. So you see this little newspaper headline, MacArthur will rule Japan, Hirohito to stay as figurehead. Formal armistice will be signed in a few days. So finally, World War II is over. And the soldiers can go back home and they can now have a normal life. There has been much death and destruction in Europe, and the United States does its best to help these countries, provide supplies, and help them to rebuild. Okay, as I've told you before, this video is a very, very brief summary of all of the things that happened when we fought and we finally won the war in the Pacific. And you can always read more, find out more about all of these things that happened. There are huge books this thick written just about the Battle of Iwo Jima, and I only spent like 2 minutes on it. So There's so much more to learn and to understand about what happened in World War II if you're interested in doing more research. And as you get older and your classes get more detailed, you'll learn more about these world wars as well. Okay, your assignment. Read pages 313 to 315 in your history textbook. Then attached to this lesson will be a study sheet. Okay, the study sheet is to help you get ready for the last test tomorrow. There's an open book, open note, open video. You can use everything I gave you to take the test. The study sheet is just going to help you to put all the information on one page. It'll be a lot easier than searching through all of your different notes trying to find answers. So your job is to fill out that study sheet so that you have it for tomorrow, and tomorrow will be the very last thing for history. Open book, open note, open video test on World War II. And this is sadly the end of history for 5th grade. It's sad, but I hope you learned a lot. I did, and I really enjoyed making these videos. Although I would have enjoyed talking to you in person more, I did enjoy making these videos for you to teach you all about history the past 2 months. All right, do that study sheet. Have a good night, guys.